Chris Cuomo joins me now. Chris, this ceasefire is so fragile. You're going to have some guests on tonight who will play through all the scenarios about how this might all play out.
Look, I mean, I had no expectation that this is what was going to happen. Right?
I don't think anybody did.
I mean, we thought that this was going to be about mission creep, and one thing leads to another, and what's really going on, and where is Congress? And now this has been a positive turn of events. Any kind of ceasefire is better than active bombing. So what happens next, of course, matters, but that doesn't make what has already happened any less valuable in terms of stability. I did not see attacking the regime as getting the regime to want to take a step back. And this was a kind of active deterrence that wound up working for now.
Right, and not only did Iran agree to the ceasefire, it also is leaving open the possibility of negotiations still to come. You know,
right?
Big caveat: it's Iran,
yes.
But still, the fact that they're willing to at least go through the motions of coming to the table and negotiating is a huge deal.
Right, and also
for President Trump.
Also recognition of their weakness, and I don't
True.
mean that in terms of dispositionally. I'm saying functionally.
No.
You know, we keep learning the same lesson.
Yeah.
You know, Russia is the most formidable. We have to build up our military for 3 decades because of the Cold War. They can barely handle what Ukraine is bringing their way, and they're getting help from China and North Korea, right? Ukraine is getting help from us. So Russia wasn't what we thought they were. Iran, the regime, is not what we thought they were. However, there's a big difference. Iran, the regime, can hurt us so many ways, including by encouraging our own self-hatred. And that's something we're talking about tonight. I
know. It's something you've been talking about actually now for several weeks. It'll be a great show, I'm sure. Chris Cuomo, take it away.
Elizabeth, thank you. Chris Cuomo here. Welcome to News Nation, where right and left come to be reasonable. My brothers and sisters, I believe it is time, okay? I know the fake fighting works. It works for the parties, it works for the pod bros, it works for the media. We love the ratings of when they're going at it with each other. It's great. But we have to see that there is a real enemy that matters so much more than every other contrivance. It hates both sides. It is coming for all of us for real. So whatever you think threatens you, trans athletes, ICE tactics, socialists, Trump talk, fake news, none of it compares to what actually is hunting all of us. I realized it was time for a wake-up call when AOC, the member of Congress from New York, was hapless enough to call for impeaching Trump again, this time for doing something that led to a ceasefire. On Saturday, AOC tweeted, "The president's disastrous decision to bomb Iran without authorization is a grave violation of the Constitution and congressional war powers. It is absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment." Now, I categorically disagree, and I don't think you'll find a legal expert that gives her anything but kind of an eye roll. But she got what she wanted, attention and Trump to hit back, right? Stupid AOC is now calling for my impeachment, despite the fact that Democrats tried that twice before. Go ahead and try impeaching me again. Make my day. AOC strikes back at Trump, writing, "Mr. President, don't take your anger out on me. I'm just a silly girl. Take it out on whomever convinced you to betray the American people." AOC is right. This is silly. And so is she. And so is the president's response. But this is where we are because this is how they want it. And it has spawned a problem neither can contain. There is a reason AOC's main allies on impeachment are the pod bros, okay? While I think there is a legal argument that a president should need Congress for military action like what Trump just did unilaterally, there is no will in Congress to check the president. They will not impeach, and they will never remove. So, why would you do it? I've asked this with each impeachment of Trump, and the answer was always the same: principle. But here's what I've realized, and I think you probably have too. That principle is empty outrage, okay? And that is AOC's signature cause. That is why for 6 years, AOC has accomplished nothing but a social media following in Congress. Find a major law she passed as the lead sponsor. The best you'll find is an attempt at the Green New Deal, which was a disaster for Democrats. She hasn't done anything effective about health care prices that are going up. People are getting 20, 30% increases in their premium. Where is she on that? Rent prices going up. She just wants it free, right? Just makes people angry, just plays to outrage. I don't know what's worse, being so impractical or so incendiary. But the time for posing and manufacturing fear is over. If you think you're going to out MAGA, you're wrong. And it doesn't matter because the fake fights are now exposed. We have an actual terror coming. In fact, it's here. It is among us, and it is part of us. ICE just arrested 11 Iranian nationals in the past 48 hours, including a man with ties to the IRGC and Hezbollah. The FBI is shifting agents it assigned to immigration enforcement to counter terror. We learned after Trump's Saturday night address about the bombings that the regime told him that they may mobilize sleeper cells if he bombed. Would have been good to know that in advance. We also had to wait to hear that cyber attacks from the regime blocked the president's own messages on social media about the bombing. We ignore cyber for some reason. If one person gets hurt physically, we go crazy. But they can hurt tens of thousands with a cyber attack, and it's like, we don't care. I don't get it. We got to wake up. That's what this is about. Just because the regime can't retaliate in an overt military way doesn't mean it can't keep doing what it's done for decades. And unlike after 9/11, our worry is not just about brown guys with beards screaming about Allah. Extremism has taken root among our own people, many of whom are brown with beards, by the way. It's not about how you look, it's about how you think, okay? Especially among our young people. We see them on both fringes. The number one terror threat domestically for years has been what? Now you're probably thinking Muslims. Wrong. Right-wing white nationalism. Now it has an equal opposite on the left, with this perverse affinity for fundamentalists like Hamas. Globalize the intifada. We hear alleged Democrats questioning Israel's right to exist, saying the regime in Iran is a victim. Both sides going all in on what? Destroying the democracy. Every institution is bad. There is no truth. There is no law and order. There is no justice. There is only fealty to one side. And yes, I blame the parties. And yes, I blame the political players who have made disruption and destroying the institutions commonplace in politics. It has encouraged people to use violence to advance political agendas. And you don't have to believe me, you just have to research. Look at all the recent political violence. There are no jihadis from the Middle East, just Americans and an Egyptian national who bought into all the extremism in the atmosphere. The guy in Boulder was an Egyptian national. But your boy Mangione, assassinating a healthcare CEO in New York, right? The guy who blew himself up outside the IVF clinic in California, the guy who assassinated 2 Israeli embassy staffers, the guy who shot the lawmakers in Minnesota and their spouses. These are not jihadis. These are homegrown extremists. This is the enemy, a modern-day Cerberus, a two-headed hound of hell, and it is coming for us online and in person. For Democrats, you need to seize this opportunity. This is why immigration resonated with the many, not just MAGA. The majority is not afraid of migrants, as Trump may like, but they are afraid of these guys, Iranian nationals with jihadist sympathies. You let them in with a laxity that AOC and other radicals insisted on. And the far left is actively embracing people who are the enemy. Pro-Hamas, people who chant globalize the intifada, the Palestinian uprising characterized by over 130 suicide bombings? Really? And I'm not picking on AOC. I respect her success in developing a following. I just think that she's killing her party. She is a deranged form of Democrat. And I'm pointing her out because she's at the top of the food chain. A recent CNN poll found she's the top Democratic leader who best reflects the core values of the Democratic Party, and this is by Democratic voters. She ranked higher than Harris, Jeffries, Newsom, even Obama. Are you kidding me? She couldn't be less about what made the Democratic Party great, and I get to say that. She is not a real one. I was raised by a real one. Google Mario Cuomo. Google Teddy Kennedy. Google Daniel Patrick Moynihan. Google any of the legends. You know the names. Remember the ideas. Mario Cuomo was a child of immigrants. He was considered less than himself. He would have never allowed a porous border or fake fights and socialistic calls for free everything, especially when there was a real bill to battle for Medicaid and tax breaks for the working class. AOC is popular because extremism drives social media and magnifies minorities. Pissing people off pays off. But radicals keep missing the rational majority. AOC and the radical left are the party of 20% when the country is the other 80%. Only 4% say Iran getting a nuke is not important. Only 18% say that men who identify as women shouldn't play in women's or girls' sports. Only 1 in 3 voters say foreign students who support terrorists should stay here. Only 16% of Americans want deportations to stop. Only 27% of voters support abolishing ICE. And forget about defunding the police or free everything. Everything that she represents is a fringe fascination. And that is what that party has become. And this is a wake-up call. You will not get back to where you want to be by abandoning everything that the majority finds reasonable. And I got to tell you, that's why her allies on impeachment are the MAGA pod bros. I mean, what are they pretending? That they're coming for Trump over the Iranian regime? Calling to impeach the only guy who ever made them relevant? Why would they be in a hurry to get rid of Trump when they will be gone as soon as he is? Here's why. Because both fringes are extreme and part of the problem. Where are the better ideas to help? MAGA does the same thing as the radical left. Not all Trump voters are white nationalists, but all white nationalists like Trump for a reason. Extreme talk. I don't think he's a bigot. I think he baits people. I think he provokes. Like making every migrant an enemy and sending ICE flying all over the place after good people while actual bad guys have been under the radar until now. Like Trump attacking the media for asking real questions. Don't make enemies of one another. We're not here to please the powerful. We do not know if the bombings in Iran were successful. We don't know. We don't know whether or not the regime can enrich uranium. Okay, that's not a failure. You got a ceasefire out of it. Don't make the media the enemy. Focus on the real one, the extremists. Even after the president announced the ceasefire deal, Iran and Israel kept mobbing each other overnight, and it was unclear whether either side would stop. When asked by reporters, President Trump called both sides out. Take a look.
Israel, as soon as we made the deal, they came out and they dropped a load of bombs, the likes of which I'd never seen before. The biggest load that we've seen. I'm not happy with Israel. You know, when I say, okay, now you have 12 hours, you don't go out in the first hour and just drop everything you have on them. So I'm not happy with them. I'm not happy with Iran either. We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the fuck they're doing. Do you understand that?
I got to tell you, I agree, okay? And now you can attack his language, but welcome to America, okay? Coarse language is the least of our problems. I love when people online say, I just wish your language weren't so rough. How about the ideas? Okay, at least he's being reasonable, okay? Israel should stop, Iran should stop. And now they are. That's good. Will it hold? I don't know. But let's discuss what actually matters and stop with all the fake fights. There are plenty of real enemies actively trying to kill us from without and within. There's no reason to make them up. Not anymore. So let's bring in former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Mideast Policy, retired Army Brigadier General Mark Kimmett. It's good to have the general back. And former acting White House Chief of Staff from the first Trump administration, Mick Mulvaney. Mick, you and I have talked about the state of play for a long, long time. And you know, calling for the impeachment. It is no coincidence that you got the fringe on both sides that are doing it. AOC and the pod bros. It's not going to happen, but it lets you know that the appetite for being at one another's throats, is that something that has to be reviewed given where we are in terms of who's coming for us?
Reviewed by whom? The answer is yes. The question is who's the proper group of people to do the reviewing, and it's got to be the voters. Folks act like this because there's a benefit to doing it. There's a lot of money to be made in outrage. You can make a bunch of money on the internet by being the most outrageous person. You can get on a bunch of television programs and raise your profile and run for higher office, and you can get reelected. The reason that we're in a representative democracy, Chris, and right now the people that we are electing are representing the voters. Until the voters change, the politicians aren't going to.
The base, the few, is who they're representing. 95% re-election in Congress, I don't have to tell you. Less than 1 in 3 approve of those same choices. What does that tell you? It's about the few, not the many. And that's why I'm just trying to rally the cause. General, we discussed this before. Now we advance the conversation one step. We do not know what the status is of the regime's uranium enrichment program. How will we know? And is that something to criticize, or it is just the natural state of play?
Well, we're going to talk about a term that you probably never heard before. You, of course, know HUMINT for human intelligence. You know COMINT for communications intelligence. You're going to learn a new one tonight. It's called MASINT, measurement and signature intelligence. It's an arcane part of the intelligence community. When you're looking at something from 50,000 feet, you've got to look at different aspects of it. You look to see if the Earth has been changed. You look at if there are radio frequencies coming out of it. You're looking for radiation emitting from it. Think about oil wildcatters these days and what they have to use to find out if there's oil 300 feet below the ground. That's an example of MASINT. So I think what we're starting to hear are some MASINT analysis of how well things have happened so far. We've seen the report in the New York Times. I'm waiting until I hear the actual determination from General Kane, who I think has had a very sober analysis of everything right now on Sunday. But look, the fact is we don't know with a high degree of certainty where things stand. It's going to take time. We call it bomb damage assessment. And in this case, unfortunately, we don't have HUMINT. We don't have guys running around on the ground. We may have a little communications intelligence. We're probably monitoring digital intelligence, but this is primarily a MASINT effort to try to determine what percentage has been damaged or destroyed. And boy, is that an arcane science and an art more than a science.
Well, I'm glad we don't have guys on the ground. Let me ask you something else quickly, General. The ceasefire, fragile. Aren't they all? And isn't this somewhat of a surprise and a good development?
Well, look, first of all, you're right. All ceasefires are fragile. But I saw something I've never seen in 40 years of government service today, which is a president who didn't use talk like, we call on all parties to maintain the ceasefire. I didn't hear a lot about back channel calls. I didn't hear a lot about letters being exchanged to the Swiss embassy. I heard a president who actually thinks that this is his ceasefire, and he used very direct and very vulgar words to try to get people to understand that this is his ceasefire and you better not mess with it. He sounded like a guy, a father talking to a couple of his rambunctious kids. So I don't think this kind of talk is taught in the Foreign Service Institute nor used in the State Department much. But I think that kind of blunt talk certainly rocked Bibi on his heels and probably did the same for the Iranians. So, hey, well done, Mr. President.
Well, look, at least we got one. I mean, look, was it supposed to be knocking out the enrichment program? Yeah. Did Trump play a little bit, Mick, about regime change when the administration was like, no, that's not what this is about? Yeah. But nobody saw a ceasefire coming out of it. And people, I think, misunderstand his bravado. He may say he wants to punch me in the mouth. but he's not going to do it. And he is not a big hawk in terms of seeing military action. He's looking for the minimum, and I think that's what we just saw.
Yeah, he's looking for something very specific. Keep in mind, on an ordinary day, Donald Trump could say everything about everything. But if you listen to him long enough, he'll tell you what he really believes. And one of the things he really believes in immigration reform, he really believes in our friends overseas paying for their own defense, and he really believes that Iran can't have a nuclear weapon. And that's what I think is missing here. Their program is over. Whether or not we destroyed it over the weekend or we're going to get a chance to go in and destroy it later on as part of the peace discussion, it's finished. The Iranians are going to have to either come to the table and show us. We're going to have human intelligence as to what happened in those facilities, because that's going to be part of the peace discussion. Donald Trump is not going to leave Iran until he knows the nuclear program is dead. And it's either going to die through the peace process or there's going to be additional military action one way or the other. That's why I know there's a great wailing and gnashing of teeth right now on the left and the right as to whether or not the bombing on Saturday was successful. I look at it differently. Donald Trump is going to get the end that he wants here, which is no nuclear weapons in Iran. And whether or not he gets it with more military in the future or through a discussion doesn't really make any difference. The die is cast on that, Chris. Look, and I think we'll look back at this period 6 weeks from now or 6 years from now and say this was the day that things turned in the Middle East because of that.
There's wailing and gnashing of teeth because we have a biblical level of commitment and addiction to gotchas. That's why the currency is in saying that he failed. That's where we are politically. Nobody wants to find reasons why anything is good about anything, Mick. And that's why, being fair is more than enough, because there are plenty of people out there trying to be unfair for profit. Mick, I appreciate you. Thank you. General, as always, thank you for the insight, and to be continued as we learn more. I didn't expect us to be here. Who knows where we go next? 4 minutes and 35 seconds. The Democrats are divided, okay? This time, look, I can't believe it. I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe any real Democrat is giving a moment's notice to impeaching the president, okay? I can't, over something that led to a ceasefire. So I want to bring in a Democrat who is a fair broker on his own and just help me understand, what am I getting wrong about the Democratic Party? How is this good for them? Next. Does any real Democrat think anything comes of trying to impeach the president, let alone for an action that led to a ceasefire between Iran and Israel? Now, 80 Democrats followed AOC calling for an impeachment. Not as many as usual, but way more than makes sense to me. I don't get it. You've tried it twice. You were never going to remove him, and it really hurt you, ultimately. So what am I missing? Let's bring in Dean Phillips, okay, former member of Congress, Minnesota, was one of the only ones to say, Biden can't do this, I'm going to primary him, and I respect him for doing that. Dean, thank you for joining me. Help me understand. I'm not a hater of AOC. I respect her assiduity, her developing of a following, of her making herself relevant, but I don't even think she is a Democrat in terms of what you guys were in your thick band with Clinton or even Obama.
And Chris, that's exactly my position. Is first of all, you chose the wrong guy to try to help you understand this, because all you need to know is that wing of the party, those 79 or 80 that voted for this, really to me comprise the new socialist Democratic wing of the party. The one that is, of course, on the ballot today in New York City, as you well know. And that is what I'm trying to get my other Democratic friends to recognize, is the weight that is placing on a party that otherwise, I believe, has good principles and values, as you just referenced, Clinton Democrats, Humphrey Democrats like me. So with all that said, it's absurd, it's obnoxious, it is counterproductive, it's anything but pragmatic. And as you just noted, the president, you can debate the authority of the president to do what he did. I understand that. I was actually one that had been trying to repeal the 1991 and 2002 AUMFs, the authorization for the use of military force, that are still active right now by presidents, Democratic or Republican, and of course the Article 2 authority that affords the president the chance to do what he needs to or she needs to defend America. And can you imagine, Chris, if that had actually come to the floor for debate? What a debacle and an embarrassment that would have been, which is a sad commentary on Congress. So with all that said, I think what you're seeing is that the Democratic caucus has now about 80 members that I would argue are no more Democratic socialists, not Democrats, not unlike the Republican side of the aisle, which has already been challenged with MAGA Republicans and America First Republicans versus the more moderate wing. And that's why, I'm arguing that I think we need competition for the overwhelming majority of Americans that are center-right, center-left. They're feeling a little bit homeless and a little confused right now, and I'm one of them.
Magnified minorities. You guys are going through the same thing. There is no GOP. Nobody even really talks about Republicans. It's all MAGA, right? And it's not just branding. The fringe has overtaken. And I think the same thing has happened to your party. I don't think it's just 80. Yes, in Congress, nominally, you had 80. But I think it's over. I think the Democratic Party is not my father's party. You guys don't fight for the working class. You fight for the fringe. You fight for the few. You pick culture wars, your trans sports. It's okay that this kid supports terror. He should stay in the country. That's who you are now. And I think that we're not going to say Democrat much longer. There's going to be some new acronym.
I think you're sadly right. There are still some trying to hold the line, still some remaining in Congress, but I think you're going to see that pendulum swing, especially as younger generations aspire to national service or public service, and we're already seeing that transition occur. And that's why everybody watching right now, I hope, gives a little thought to the fact that we somehow protect this monopoly on our democracy, if you will, with two parties, two private corporations that have a monopoly on our democracy, and why we wouldn't promote, encourage, and create some space and place for alternative perspectives. I know there are many, Chris, on the right and left in Washington right now, in the House and Senate, that would make a jump to a new entity if they knew that this entity had their backs. And I think this country, our country, needs that now more than ever, because this is just nonsensical.
Do you hear from people in your party that they are really on the wrong side of the 80-20 when it comes to extremism and the risk that it poses to this country, and that you got to run away from people who say globalize the intifada, because that's going to be the culture issue on the ballot in the midterms? You're going to have a macroeconomic picture that's going to work in your favor if things stay the way they are right now as Democrats, or whatever you call yourselves at that time. But the social issue is going to be who's trying to kill us, and your party is going to be seen as sheltering and defending these people.
And that's why I find myself on the outside now, having spoken my truth. I think it represents an overwhelming majority of Democratic voters. By the way, we're not just on the wrong side of what you just spoke about. We're on the wrong side of the immigration issue. We were on the wrong side of the inflation issue, essentially denying that it was a problem when we are the party of the working class. If you do a retrospective on just the last number of years, Chris, it's astounding on how we've stopped listening. When I say we, the Democratic Party has stopped listening to voters. Increasingly, voters are even failing to communicate because they've had enough and they're just retreating to their corners. And that is a sad commentary on the state of political affairs. But all it takes is a little bit of initiative, a little bit of interest in doing better. And for all those wondering what we can do, let's promote some competition and create opportunities for people of more moderate perspectives, common sense, and most of all, competency. And I want to say one more thing about those 80 that voted not to table the resolution, the impeachment resolution. I would imagine most of those 80, Chris, have never worked outside of organizing, activism, or politics. And when you've worked in an enterprise, for-profit, nonprofit, any organization, and you realize that to get something done, you got to be pragmatic, you got to build coalitions, and you have to read the room. You got to read the room. You got to serve your customers. And if all you're doing is serving a very small subset, that's great. But you're not going to win national elections, and it is so consequential now. So take a look at those 80 names, and I would imagine you'll find very few have done anything but serve in the political arena. That's a failure of our current democracy.
But I hope this is a moment for the membership, because it really checks every box. Forget about the uselessness of trying to impeach this guy when you don't have the numbers, but the rationale. we just got a ceasefire out of that. Look, I didn't like it. I don't think he's got the legal authority. I think the 2001, 2002 AUMFs don't apply and are a joke at this point. And I think the War Powers Resolution is not unconstitutional the way the Speaker says. That's just his way of stepping away from it. But Congress doesn't want to own it, so it's not going to happen. And it puts you on the side of, like, backing the regime as a victim. It's just crazy. Anyway, Dean, you're always welcome here to make the case. I'm seeing it, all right.
Chris,
I'm just asking you because, you know, these are your people.
Yeah, well, they are my people. I'm still trying to reform it, but I got to tell you, like most Americans right now, I'm getting into a point where I've had enough, and that's why I appreciate your perspective and what you're promoting as well, which is reason and common sense. There's a dearth of it in Washington, D.C.
My politics are very simple. Don't help the people who want to chop my head off. That's my platform. Dean, thank you very much. That would be a good slogan
for Democrats.
Yeah, tell me about it. The bad bumper sticker, but it's in the right place. 4 minutes and 30 seconds. Dean, take care. We'll talk again soon. So, the FBI is shifting thousands of its agents from immigration enforcement to counterterrorism. Why? Immigration is such a hot issue. Why would they do that? You know why? Because they have to. And that's why we just learned of 11 Iranian nationals being arrested by ICE today. One of them admitted to being connected to a terror group. How are they getting in, and why are they coming? Next. Let's spend 5 good minutes on this because it's not a one-off, okay? The FBI isn't shifting thousands of agents away from Trump's signature policy, right? Immigration enforcement to counter-terror and cyber threats for no reason. Okay? We learned today that in the past 48 hours, they arrested 11 Iranian nationals, one of which is a former IRGC member with ties to Hezbollah. Remember, that's the group from Lebanon. Remember, the regime reaches out through proxies who are like-minded, but sometimes even sectarian rivals. Why? Because the enemy of the enemy is their ally of convenience. This comes days after Iranian-backed cyber attackers regime. You know, you can't say Iran because that's blaming the people. The people are oppressed. The people are good and legitimate. It is the regime, okay? And their attackers used cyber, got into Trump's Truth Social, blocked users for a while from seeing his posts about the strikes. Nobody even told us about it. Why? Because we hide things that need to come out, all right? It was once said that everything the government doesn't want you to know is news. Everything else is propaganda. Okay, joining me now to discuss the state of reality is retired FBI Supervisory Special Agent James Gagliano. Now, Gags, thank you for very much coming in again. The thing we're up against is, yeah, I've heard all this before. Okay, yeah, I get it. You're just trying to make what's old new again.
Well, Chris, I agree with you. Let me just unpack a little bit about the FBI, not to get too wonky or too much inside baseball. The FBI's been around since 1908, 117 years. There are 12,000 FBI special agents. It's been that way consistently across the last 20 years. They've got a $12 billion budget. Chris, the 3 primary focuses, and this has not changed since a young guy by the name of J. Edgar Hoover, as a 29-year-old, took over the agency in 1924. 3 C's. Criminal, which means U.S. code. There's about 5,000 different federal violations. Counterintelligence, spy versus spy, and counterterrorism. So those are the 3 things the FBI is focused on. And I think sometimes when we read it in the press, read it in the media, and they're like, well, Director Patel is sending 1,000 agents to the border to enforce immigration laws. Not true. What they're doing is they're pursuing FBI cases, violations of counterintelligence, counterterrorism, or criminal in support of ICE operations. So it's a little more nuanced, I think, than what the general public might understand about where these FBI agents are assigned and what their true purpose is.
Why are they shifting the threat levels and messaging such urgency if it's just pro forma case management?
You know, I don't know. I'd push back on pro forma case management. I remember a year after 9/11 when Robert Mueller went up on the Hill, the FBI director at the time, and testified that he was moving 600 agents out of the criminal division and moving them to counterterrorism. Now, at the time, this is post 9/11, and it made sense. The FBI is constantly adjusting. Now, J. Edgar Hoover once famously said also that wherever I dispatch G-men or FBI agents, people have to understand that's where the national priorities are. You pointed it out tonight earlier. Obviously, President Trump's priorities are immigration, but the FBI is still focused on those 3 C's.
One of my guys, one of my sources says, what do you mean, why are we doing it? Look at what's been happening in the country. He gave me, this guy, the two-headed dog of Cerebus thing that I used in my mono tonight, that it's not just jihadis anymore, it's homegrown people who have taken to the extremism of the environment and act on their politics with violence. The CEO murderer, the guy in Minnesota, that these are not jihadis. They weren't radicalized online as far as they know by jihadis. They're just extreme and they're terrorists, and that's why there's an urgency.
Right, and we talk about this often, you and I, when we unfortunately have to deal with terror attacks and horrible crimes like this, like mass shootings. Chris, there's those that are directed and those that are inspired to do something. And obviously with the internet being what it is, people go there, you talk about the extremism all the time and the volatile language. Look, you know, the internet's a deep and vast place, and these people go and they find what? Solidarity, whatever their cause is, globalize the intifada, you know, kill the minorities, whatever it is, they find it there. And in the United States, it's a tough thing to pursue here because people can use hyperbole, they can say things in the heat of the moment. Yeah.
Well, we don't punish ideas. We punish actions. But you got to see when one is leading to the other. And I think that's why there's this reapportionment of manpower, because I think they know we're in for another wave. This is just the beginning. Gags, thank you very much. I know you'll be with me throughout whatever happens, and I look forward to leaning on you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, brother. 4 minutes and 15 seconds. So here's what we need if we want to talk about Iran. Somebody who can help us understand the difference between the regime and the people, who understand the culture of being Persian, who also understands the tension of the Islamist regime and Judaism and what it's like to be here in this country versus there. I have a guest who knows all of it from a clinical and personal perspective. Checks every box. Next. The regime in Iran does not represent the people of Iran. The people are oppressed and confused, like this woman who has disguised her voice and identity pleading for help.
This regime should end. If you leave this regime, with these wounds, they will harm all of us. Please help us. We are scared. We are scared not from Israel, not from B-2 bombs, not from America. We are scared from our own regime.
And yet, the people, the innocents, pay the price of all of it, right? Israel's bombs don't just hit specific targets, okay? Ours won't if they're not in very remote areas. And we're not going on the ground there to create regime change. So for all the talk of Iran, it confuses the schism in that society that you have to understand to appreciate the realities here at home. How do I know? Because my friend told me. My friend is Nazee Moinian. She was raised in Tehran. Her family fled here after the '79 revolution. She has lived it, but also studied it, and is now an adjunct fellow at the Middle East Institute. Thank you, my friend, for coming to help.
Thank you for having me.
You told me I need to have you on. You're, of course, right, as you have been our entire relationship. And I want you to help people understand what this is about and why it's not just 9/11, war on terror all over again.
Right. That's a great question, Chris, and I'm not surprised that you hit it, right on the head. This is a war that is unfolding in front of our eyes now between Iran and Israel, and then between U.S. and Iran and Israel for some time, for 2 weeks almost. But the reality is that this is the vision that the leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Khomeini, had in 1979. That's his doctrine, to export the revolution, to create an atmosphere where there's division within a society, where elements that claim victimization, that claim that we are settlers and everybody else is wrong and they're right, will create enough fissure within a society that we will collapse on ourselves. And then the Khomeini people, or Khomeinism as a cult or as an ideology, will be able to replace the Western civilization with an Islamic caliphate. And we see it now, but the Israelis have seen it for a longer time than we have, because they're at the forefronts of this this ideological war. And now that has become operational.
We've learned something else that I want you to give me your opinion on. And we'll keep talking as this story progresses, okay? This isn't the last time I have you on. We understand this when you have people who are sleeper cell here, or they come into the country to attack in the name of that cause. What we have not seen before is Americans who look like me, except they're 30 years younger, adopting the fundamentalism and saying, we have victimized these people, and I am taking up their cause because America is wrong. Did you ever think that you would see kids on Ivy League campuses saying Israel doesn't have a right to exist? Hamas are freedom fighters, right, and what we're seeing more and more of? What does that mean?
I wish I could make a sense of it for you, but one thing that I can tell you with certainty is that what we're seeing now on college campuses across the US and in Europe is almost an exact replay of what happened in Iran before the Islamic Revolution. And the Shah of Iran called it the marriage of Marxism and Islamism, or the marriage of red with black. Red being the communist or socialism, and black being the Khomeiniism, Islam, and political Islam. So what I can tell you with 100% certainty is, if we don't wake up now, if we don't address this movement that has brainwashed our youth, has basically turned their priorities upside down, has masked the truth, has made victimization and martyrdom a glorious state of thing, we will end up where the Western liberal values will be marginalized. And this is a Judeo-Christian country based on Judeo-Christian doctrines. And we need to act before we end up in a semi-revolution where that ideology of, I don't know what to call it, it's victimization, but it's also a grievance, and being able to say, everything is not my fault, everything is your fault. And that's what happened in Iran. Nothing was, the fault of intellectuals and Bazaris and everybody else that brought Khomeini to power. Everything had to do with the elite and what the Shah did.
Nazee, thank you. The battle is abroad, but it is also here at home. Thank you very much. To be continued.
Thank you.
I appreciate you.
Thank you, Chris.
And I appreciate you, too. That's why we'll be right back. Not pro-Democrat, not anti-Democrat, not pro-MAGA, not anti-MAGA. I'm anti the system. The binary nature of it, the zero sum, that someone's got to lose in order for you to win, it's killing us. And it is fed an extremism that is now bleeding into violence in our society, and it's going to be redoubled by the fundamentalism that we just kicked in the hornet's nest that is the Iranian regime. I know it. I've lived it before. It's worse this time, and it takes all of us. The artificial division has to end. I'm not trying to help Trump by telling Democrats not to impeach him. I'm saying to help one another, because the real battle is never going to be an impeachment. It's never going to happen. But if we don't come together, we're going to be killed from without and within. Leland Vittert starts right now.
You lived it before. How do we get out of it?
The way we got out of it for that one moment after 9/11 was nothing else mattered. We all had a common enemy.
Something awful had to happen.
That's exactly right, which, we've talked about before. You either have a transcendent figure or you have a transcendent crisis. I don't want to have a crisis. I don't think we're going to have a figure, but you can have a cause, which is the commonality of reasonable people. And that's what we're shooting for here at News Nation, to get independent, critical thinkers to realize, hey, we share a lot more. I love this country, and there are people who want to kill us. So let's focus on that, inside and out.
That was Ronald Reagan's message, 1980, came rally around the flag.
Listen, I have no problem with rally around the flag. It's all about what you're defining that as. And to me, Luigi Mangione is no different than an Osama bin Laden. They're the same animal. They want to kill what you and I love. That's all that matters.
Fair enough. And you're right. If we don't have that, then nothing else matters.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.